So I've seen this field inside and out, and I believe it's important to talk about it from an infrastructure type perspective. So what we're going to talk about today is what these things actually mean, what they are, the details of what you're going to get in this type of care, and how to navigate it. So that way you can get the best results for yourself, knowing what really makes a difference for you. So when I sold, I worked for an independent living .
Kayla, would you mind if I grab a couple of your handouts?
No, go ahead, Ashley. I work for an independent living facility. Have any of you taken tours of any facilities? Have you gotten to know what's available through the area? You have?
I toured it.
Okay, great. So that's memory care.
Memory care.
Anybody else?
Sunnybrook.
Yeah.
And we've been to shores,
Coastal shores.
Yeah.
coastal shores.
Yep.
And we've been to the one in Thompson.
Okay. When you made those tours, especially coastal shores, was it clear to you what type of facility you were touring? Coastal shores is independent, as far as I know. The plant home largely is independent. Let's see, who else? There's a lot of independent living at the Highlands.
They also have other sections.
Yes. So right now I'm just going to tell you what you can find at an independent living facility. This is going to be housekeeping. Activities. Meals. Transportation. Security. But what you're not going to get is care. There's not going to be someone there to help you get to meals. There's not going to be someone there to tie your shoes, remind you of things, that kind of support. These independent living facilities are based on a cruise ship model. So it's actually supposed to be more entertaining and activities based than care. However, when I sold an independent living facility, I often heard the term, you're living with assistance in our facility, but you're not in assisted living. So that reflects on a few things. The care piece is big. Nobody tie your shoes, nobody gets you out of bed in the morning, nobody to remind you of meals, those kinds of things. But it's gonna have an unregulated atmosphere, which means anyone can live there, as long as you can find the right level of support. And it's gonna be a lot less expensive than a medical model, like assisted living. Because in assisted living, you're paying for support from caregivers, nurses, and a team of people who are there to keep your medical needs taken care of. So where this is a cruise ship model, assisted living is going to have more support for you. When you go to assisted living, you're going to get the care, and that's going to be a step from independent. Anyone can live in assisted living. However, you're paying a premium if you don't need care. So because you're paying to two models. The buffet, I call it, or a la carte. Some facilities do it one way and others do it a different way. The buffet is where you can go in paying one rate and get all the care you need for that same rate. The a la carte model is where you go in and you pay per level or service. So if the administrator of the facility, who ultimately makes these calls after the nursing team gives you their support, says you need more care, you're gonna end up paying more money than what you planned on paying when you go in. Question? One of the things that isn't immediately recognizable in a lot of facilities, especially some of the larger chain facilities, is that they will often give you an a la carte price for care and say, okay, every 15 minutes you're gonna pay this. However, if you push back, they will often negotiate on the amount of care that you pay for. So, assisted living is for folks who need an added touch of care. But that's different from independent living, which is an unregulated atmosphere. Unregulated means anyone can live in independent living, as long as you can get the care. Assisted living, in some facilities, will say, oh, you know, it's age in place. You can age here as long as you need to. It's important to know what the limitations are. Because it's a medical facility, you have regulation that doesn't exist in an independent facility. Therefore, if you have Parkinson's or, you know, are a danger to yourself or others, maybe have wandering or things like that, you may find that they have asked you to move to the next level, whether that's a nursing home or that's memory care. So the difference between an assisted living facility and memory care is twofold. A memory care facility operates like an assisted living facility in most cases, but one of the things a memory care facility will have is a heightened level of security. So at independent living, where you'll have security like in the form of a fob that you might wear, in assisted living, they'll check on you more frequently. They have certain periods where they're required by law to lay eyes on you. And in memory care, they're required to do all of the above. So they have locked facilities, which is different from assisted living, and it's different from independent living. You probably have some form of security fob or something you wear that allows them to keep track of you. And they have a higher ratio of staff to residents. Question?
I have a quick question.
Yes. Go ahead, Ashley.
So, something that I've seen, I feel like more recently, is people being in independent living,
Yeah.
usually like spouses,
Yes.
and having an outside caregiver coming into independent living in order to kind of like put off going into a different level. How often do you see that? And
All the time.
And do you feel like that's a good option, or do you feel like transitioning to the next level is a better option?
So when I was a salesperson for an independent facility, I would believe that anybody can live an independent as long as they want, and that is true to a point. However, I feel like assisted living and memory care are better options for families who don't wanna take direct care of their loved one and want to spend time enjoying the social element of life. So, you know, independent living is unregulated, which means you can live there as long as you want to. I would be chagrined if I told you I didn't see nursing care patients living in independent living. That is a thing. Most independent living facilities that I know of will have a home care agency on site, so you can pay a la carte for services with them. But they're not gonna do things like enhanced assisted living where, you know, you need a Hoyer lift and they're gonna get you out of bed, or two-person lift assist, in independent ever. They're never, you know, it'd be very rare that you would find a home care agency that would wanna take that on. But most independent facilities do have a home care agency on site.
So if someone is in the independent,
Yes.
does that facility have something to say about that particular person if they need more assistance, like they need to go to assisted care? Do they often suggest or talk with the family or the person, or how does that work? Because I know my brother had his wife in memory care, and she really should have gone to the long-term care, probably a couple months. And they kind of kept her. Maybe they had a low census. I don't know what happened, but she eventually moved. But do they have a say in that when they are, you know, starting an independent?
So I don't have a way to illustrate this, but it's definitely something you wanna pay attention to. A large facility that offers independent, assisted memory care, places like the Highlands, they are gonna have a say in what happens to your loved one. If you have a standalone independent living facility, they will not. So, things to pay attention to would be the assisted living facility who says to you, can I, you know, you move into assisted living and they say, but you can live here independently. Again, you're gonna pay a premium for that, even if you don't need any care. If you live in independent living, you're gonna pay out of pocket for everything. There's nothing included except for meals, activities, transportation, housekeeping, that cruise ship model. It's a social model where assisted living tends to be, depending on where you go, you can have a medical model, which is more about taking care of your care needs, or a social model, which is more about activities and enrichment. Those are not the same things. Make sense? I answered your question. So let's talk next about what these places generally cost. Independent living, because it's your least hands-on atmosphere, you'll see rates, depending on the building, approximately $2,000 to $5,500 per month. Independent living facilities generally have multiple options of apartment style that you can pick from. Studios, one bedroom, on your care model, whether that's a la carte or that's buffet. And it's also going to make a difference what type of apartment style you have. Most of these places do have apartments that they're selling. I've heard the average rate for assisted living is $8,700 a month. And there are different models, right? So like, I live in the Portland area, and down in Portland, there's a model where it's called the Continuing Care Retirement Community. And you might find some of those north or mid-coast as well. Like I believe St. Andrews, which is in Booth Bay, I think, is one of them too. Those are different. If you buy into that, so you spend $500,000, and then every month you pay $4,000 for maintenance and repairs and heat and that kind of stuff. But ultimately, that cash that you've invested stays with you until you're in the nursing home. Where when we're talking about independent living or assisted living, or even memory care or a nursing home, those are monthly expenditures. Memory care, you could say anywhere from, I don't know, $6,000 probably a month to probably 12, I would say. Although, this is low end. I've seen folks who pay upwards of almost $20,000 a month to be in community living. I was talking to Ashley earlier, I said, you know, one of the things that we don't talk often enough about is that as Maine gets older, nursing care, facility living is going to be a privilege. Most people are not gonna live in facilities. You just can't make that work anymore. Nursing homes. Starts at about $13,000 a month. All of these are different levels of support. Cruise ship model, some care, you might pay by the 15-minute increment. Memory care, you probably would have to choose, depending on your facility, how to pay for that care. Some are a la carte, some are buffet. Nursing home, you're required, because this is like a heightened level of medical need. You're required to take what they give you. Nursing homes are required to have a 100% Maine care ratio. So you move into a nursing home, you run out of money, they have to take Maine care for your bed. If you run out of money in any of these facilities, if they are private pay, which 99% of them are, you will be asked to leave. Something you might see that gets a little bit tricky, and I see it a lot, are spend now periods. You move into memory care, and they say, okay, we know you have 3 years left to spend with us. We're gonna require you to take that 3 years. And they have a base rate, like you have to pay a year and a half or 3 years depending on the facility. And then when you're done with your money, they'll put you on Maine care if they have a bed. I've seen it where people have had to leave their facilities because they have been promised a bed that they didn't end up getting.
Is that because the beds are backlogged? I mean, basically.
Yeah, right? So like, an equation I use a lot is that there's a facility that I've worked with in the past, beautiful facility, 130 apartments, and when they were selling them before they opened, they would say, So if you have 130 beds or apartments, and 20 residents end up needing main care at the same time, but you only have 4 licenses, 16 of those people are asked to leave.
So what's their option then? If they've paid down and they've run out of funds, they have to find somebody who has a main care bed.
Correct. And most places don't do spend down, or most places don't take main care eligible beds right off of the street, you know? So you have to go in, you have to spend down, and then get it.
Put the money into that facility.
Correct. Correct.
They're investing in their facility, but they're not following through with what they tell them.
Correct.
Is that something you can ask as you're doing the tour? Like, is that a
Oh,
normal
sure.
question? How many beds
I
do you, are
don't
you
think
licensed
the
for?
power for that lies with the salesperson.
Right. Is that even something that they would know, or is that something that,
They'll give
Would
you
you
their best
follow?
estimate.
gotcha.
Yeah. It's a really hard job to be a salesperson in some of these places.
Right, and you know, longer, like you say, Maine has the largest population of elderly folks. So the more time goes by, the less and less Maine care beds there are going to be.
It's really tough.
Can I?
Yeah.
When I toured a facility, I was told that Maine Care very shortly will be, you have to be able to have 4 years worth of your own money. Because there won't be enough Maine Care money to pay
Yep,
for your bed.
yep.
Is that an increase there from 3? I heard.
It is.
They're starting to make.
They're now the same number of 4 years, which that's a long time. $13,000 more.
Families will often ask me, should we get on main care? And my answer is, unless you're planning to go to the nursing home, which most people don't, main care is not always a good option. If you go to a nursing home, yeah, but then we have, places like, Genesis facilities, there's 11 of them throughout the state, and they just qualified for bankruptcy. It's a tricky proposition.
Is the state doing anything to see about getting more Medicare beds certified?
So I haven't really worked, much with the, I haven't really done a lot to advocate in Augusta. What I will say is that if you look at the last 10 years, there's probably been countless closings of nursing homes. And what will happen, unless those beds get bought before the facility closes, the beds go away.
Right.
Yeah, so we're, it's a,
Yeah, I used to work at Lincoln Health, so. I'm
yeah,
familiar
yeah,
with this.
yeah, it's pretty serious. Now we wanna talk about home care. Medicaid or main care will pay for home care, if you can get on the list. I worked in Augusta briefly, in 2020, and my understanding was that there were probably 900 people being served by Medicaid long-term care, and there were 900 people on the waiting list for Medicaid long-term care. So you got a 2-to-1 ratio. The chances of getting home care through main care are very, very slim. So, home care, and I put a lot of this on your sheet, so when you go home you can review it and look at it, but with home care, one of the things you'll want to know is that a lot of agencies will require you to do 4-hour blocks.
is that direct care in 4 hours, or are you paying for the person's time to get there, or anything like that?
It's direct care usually. I can't speak for all options, because there are home care agents. There's a difference between an agency and someone you might find on care.com. You can hire privately for these folks. Agencies make a lot of things easier. They'll keep track of your time, and they'll take care of the staff for you, paying them like they're one of yours. But at the same time, agencies know we're running out of folks in Maine, and we have to do something about prioritizing care. So what they do is they prioritize the families who need more care. And this is how they structure that largely. Home care, depending on where you're at in the state, can usually cost anywhere from $35 an hour to $55 an hour.
A minimum of 2 hours, some are 3 hours,
Yeah, yep,
twice a week, minimum.
correct, yep, exactly, just like that. Yep, and remember, if you choose to go another route, you can always hire off care.com and interview yourself and try to figure out the logistics that way. But it's not quite as streamlined as going with an agency. Yes.
What do you get for that price? What's typically done in a home care?
That's such a good question, thank you for asking it. I work with families in my role to help them prioritize what they get. Because you can say to a caregiver, well, to the agency usually, but here are the tasks I want done. Some people choose to have an agency cook for them. Some people want their gardens weeded. Some people want help bathing and showering. Medication reminders, depending on how frequently you see these folks. Does that answer your question?
I thought there'd be more.
Well, it's whatever you need to stay in your home longer.
What if there's more intense care?
Like toileting, they'll do that too. Like some agencies will have priorities that others don't.
Do they charge for them, but let's say they need help with their ostomy or things like that?
You may find that it's not a non-medical team you need. You may find that you need a clinical home person. And there is a difference. So,
Would you go home care if you're just looking for someone to, in essence, to give you respite?
oh sure.
Would that be the
Yep.
kind of thing you need?
Yep, exactly. Medicaid will pay for this if you're lucky enough to qualify and get on the list and wait your turn. And there's also long-term care insurance that probably some of you have. Long-term care insurance is brutal on the front end, but it's helpful to a lot of people on the back end. So with this is your non-clinical home care. And then Medicare will pay for medical home care. The difference would be non-clinical teams come to your home, support you to stay in your home. Medical home care is there after you've been through the hospital or you've been to rehab, and they get you up to baseline. So where non-clinical home care will stay with you and help you through the process, medical home care might only be in there for 60 days, if even that. But insurance pays for that, where you're not gonna get anybody to pay for non-clinical. So with Medicare and insurance paid medical home care, you're getting occupational therapy, physical therapy, you're getting nursing, and an array of clinical support.
excellent question. I'll find out.
Thank you. Yes.
Is the requirements for Medicare and Medicare medical home care, is that explained to you in the hospital somehow, so that you go from the hospital setting to your home setting and things become available, as you say, the RN occupation, all that stuff that you've written down there? Who
Yeah.
explains that to you so you know your
Yep. So, one of the things that I've seen done more often than in the past is that a facility or medical hospital like Maine Med will ask you when you get to Maine Med if you can't be discharged home, where do you wanna go? That is not the same for home care. For home care, you get given, you're given a list, and you pick your list, but it's often very confusing and hard to
What's the
navigate.
one?
The list of what agencies are available. Yeah. So like in Brunswick, you might have Chan's or Andwell or Intrum or Maine Health, Care Home. Those are all different options for medical home care. And there is a website, home care. There is a federal government website where they'll actually compare outcomes for these agencies. But it is really confusing to follow that, because what my experience was that when I worked for a medical home care agency, once you start taking Maine care, you'll be asked over and over and over again to take more and more and more of it. And where that gets tough is it's not necessarily a sustainable business practice for the owner. And so the quality of care, unless you have a very balanced agency, does decline based on how much Maine care you accept. If that makes sense. Thank you.
Doing great.
So non-clinical home care, they're gonna do whatever tasks you want them to keep you in your home.
At cost.
Yes. Unless you can get, Medicaid to cover it, but even still, there are a lot of requirements and very few hours available to most of it. The medical home care is specific to your ailment, or specific to your medical need.
How much does Medicare typically cover in both those scenarios?
It covers all of it for medical home care, and none of it, or very little. And some policies are getting savvier, but for the most part, what I've seen is that non-clinical home care is not covered by anything related to Medicare. Any thoughts? It's pretty tough. When I work with families, I help them come up with lists. Like I said, Maine Med is asking now, when you go to Maine Med, they're gonna say, where do you wanna go when you get discharged out of here in case you can't go home? So the idea is that, for me, if you're 75 or older, we should be working together. So that way you have a plan and can give Maine Med your 3 choices when you're discharged.
What's the general waiting for, I'm thinking memory care, what's the general waiting time to get a spot in memory care? Like how soon beforehand should you be?
Getting yourself on a list and stuff like that. If it's a Maine care facility that, or excuse me, if it's a memory care facility that predominantly accepts Maine care, like straight off the street, get on it the minute you have a diagnosis. If you're going private pay, plan for a year, maybe. I've seen it, and I can't speak to every place, but a line that was often used was that there are long wait lists. If you're paying privately, the wait lists are not nearly as long as you may hear from a salesperson.
Or can you get on a wait list and then your number comes up and you're not ready and just stay
Sure.
on the list?
Sure.
And do you generally have to pay to be on a wait list, or?
Depends on, every place does it different. There's no consistency from what I've seen.
Personal comment to that, Rita, when I visited that facility, that was about a year on the wait list. And then I put my loved one's name at the Maine State VA home. He's a veteran. He's been on 3.5 years. And I just learned he's third from the top. So I'm just one less, but I would put your loved one's name in a couple places.
So, has anything felt particularly familiar to you in this conversation that we're having?
Well, we talk among ourselves a lot. One of the questions I have is, we talked in our support groups of, looking for facilities that will accept Maine care. So, wouldn't do the private pay, but now you're saying even though they accept it, it may not be guaranteed that you could use your money up in 3-4 years and then be back at your house.
I have not seen a state.
Right. Any, I know when mental health went down in the state of Maine, when they closed Camp those folks, first had group homes, and they closed that. Then they went to their families. They didn't have a family. I'm not sure where those folks went, but it feels like we'll be going back to, you know, trying to do home care. Does that sound like that's
I have said, and I'll talk with you shortly before we conclude our time together today, but I have said that if we haven't already crossed the threshold of failure for this system, it's upon us.
That's what it seems.
So I help families to figure out what's important to them and go into facilities when they get a bed or an apartment in a way that's empowered and in a way that produces better results. Because for so long we've talked about the awful stories of nursing homes, you know, the bed sores and how crisis is happening that way. But what we're not talking about is the fact that these beds are they're not even gonna be available if we're not gonna go. So I help families figure out what's important to them and plan accordingly. If you're 75 or older, you should have a plan.
I may have missed this because I came in late because my loved one decided to go wandering before I left. My friend in Denver, and maybe this is what you do, there's agencies where they can give you, like a listing of the different, this would be memory care, and kind of do some of the research for you.
Yes.
Is that?
Yes. I do it differently because, and I'll talk with you more here in a minute, but there's agencies that really focus on care and there's agencies that really focus on housing. But Maine Aging Partners was designed to support the middle. So it's about housing, care, and public policy. Because so much gets lost in debate over politics and public policy. One side supports care, one side supports housing. You don't see a combination often enough. And that's what I do.
Can I ask a This
Yes.
may be off topic. So my situation is probably a little odd. We are trying to work with my housemate's mother, who is 83. She lives in Whitney, Ohio. My housemate actually bought a 600 square foot house here in Bath for her to move into. She is incredibly resistant, but she is someone that, in terms of her physical needs, does need to be in a nursing home. And we're trying to do this long distance. I also just went through this with my 95-year-old godmother who died in March. And she was living in her own home independently up until hospitalization. Had a reverse mortgage on the house. The house had to be sold. There was no money to provide the healthcare for her. And the last weeks of her life were horrible because she had to be in a nursing home. But it also was a real eye-opener because she didn't have Medicaid in place, so we had to hire an attorney in New Jersey to apply for Medicaid on her behalf. That was $6,000. Just out the window, and she died, while it was still in process. So we're trying to be proactive with this other elderly woman.
Yeah.
How do you deal with the resistance when the patient, for lack of a better word, says, I'm fine, but they're clearly not. They have complex medical needs and are no longer safe on their own.
So I, having been a salesperson in the field, believe that there's a lot of fear. For good reason. You're giving up so much autonomy. But I encourage families to lean into it. Have conversations, happen early, go on tours, bring your loved one. Do what you can to make this type of care more accessible instead of something to be feared. So, I want to tell you a story and why I'm really here today. In 2020 to 2021, I served on the board of the Plant Home here in Bath. The Plant Home is assisted living, and while we were fighting to keep it open, it wasn't money that we were missing. It was the will to stand behind it. It wasn't outside rescue we needed. It was someone to say, this matters. We went for help again and again. And by the time anyone looked up, over $1 million had been quietly moved. The Plant Home stayed open, but not because the system worked. The Plant Home stayed open because the people inside of it refused to give up. Residents were never told. You can have a facility with good care that is still completely cut off from the systems meant to support it. Oversight, funding, and legitimacy. And when that support disappears, facilities will operate in the shadows. Good people doing what they can to do what's right, while the system looks the other way. That's not care, that's abandonment. This is not about one person. This is about a system that quietly fails and leaves older Mainers to bear the burden. When a facility survives through silence, we have to ask ourselves, what kind of leadership does that reflect? It should not take heroics to keep older Mainers safe and housed, but right now it does. And as long as we ignore that, we will lose. We will lose buildings, we will lose budgets, and we will lose the support of older Maine people. When I served on the board of the Plant Home, I saw something most people never get close to. A nonprofit doing everything right and still almost frozen. The problem wasn't effort or ethics, the problem was the system. Families need more than advice. Families need a guide who can help them understand how housing, care, and policy collide, and how good intentions are getting lost in the middle. That's why I started Maine Aging Partners. We work to help older families figure out what matters most and how to protect it. We help them by speaking the language of long-term care and knowing where the gaps are. While my story is rooted in Maine, I can tell you, because I've had lots of conversations, we are not the only ones facing these cracks. If you care about aging well, this matters no matter where you live. It's not about filling a bed, it's about getting it right. Thanks.
So what can people do to help with the system?
Yeah, so
Should we be holding up? What?
so I think there's a lot of different things that we can do. I think it's important to recognize the contribution that these facilities make in our communities. I was telling Ashley that before I came today, I reached out to all the city councilors here in Bath and Brunswick, knowing that the plant home is struggling and not in a position to stand solidly at the moment. Like they're operating in the shadows. So having a live connection to folks who can make a difference, while understanding that every penny you spend on this is transformative. Your money is extremely valuable when it comes to long-term care, because where you put it allows you to make a difference in the value system that's being used. Caitlin, does anyone have any last minute questions for Caitlin? Beautiful, thank you.
Now, I'm gonna jump in with a couple of extra things, because I know as all of you have been listening, you're like, okay, now I need to start planning, and beds seem like they're really hard to come by, and how do I do this? So in the meantime, as you guys are thinking about all that stuff, remember that we're here at Bath Brunswick Respite Care. If you have someone in your life with dementia, Alzheimer's, anything like that, we can help stay at home longer. Even if you don't use our adult day facility, you can call us and we will direct you to elder law attorneys that will help with funding. We will help find in-home care providers that can do all the things that you need and will be available to you. So please give me a call if you need any of that. Our next event is going to be on September 4th, and Bath Housing is going to be coming in to talk about all the resources that they have. And then on October 2nd, Ashley Daigle from the Bath Savings Bank is going to be coming in to talk about investments and how to stretch those to pay for long-term care and staying at home and all of that. Bye, guys.